conducting one of the satanic rituals as written by LaVey, the Ceremony of the Nine Angles, and we will hopefully be summoning the Goat of 1,000 Ages and maybe indoctrinating ourselves into the Order of the Nine Angles, which is a secret society of Satanists, perhaps the most secret society of Satanists, who advocate animal sacrifice, human sacrifice, and reshaping the world according to your will.
The last time we saw Matthews, he was living in Beausejour, a small town an hour east of Winnipeg. Police had just raided his house and seized some firearms. Soon after, Matthews was released from the Canadian Army, where he was a reservist with explosives training. RCMP and the military were investigating his alleged role as a recruiter for the neo-Nazi group The Base when Matthews went underground.
The Order of Nine Angles is actually a very well-known cult, and it's one of the biggest and said to be one of the most dangerous cults, supposedly one of the most dangerous satanic Nazi cults in the world. The Order of Nine Angles is a satanic and left-hand path occult group based in the UK, but with affiliated groups in various other parts of the world.
David Woolstan Myatt has been described as an extremely violent, intelligent, dark, and complex individual, as a martial arts expert, and as one of the more interesting figures on the British neo-Nazi scene since the 1970s. Before his conversion to Islam in 1998, Myatt was the first leader of the British National Socialist Movement, NSM, and was identified by the British newspaper The Observer as the ideological heavyweight behind Combat 18.
The thing about left-hand path, it's also the left-hand path and right-hand path is very well known in Wicca and in paganism. So the left-hand path is known to be the darker and like evil side of magic, and then the right-hand path is like the good, righteous path in magic. This cult was established in the late 1960s in Welsh marshes of Western England. It gained its recognition in the 1980s for its neo-Nazi ideologies and activism.
I was watching one of the Atomwaffen propaganda videos, which to me, looked exactly like an ISIS video. What are people learning how to fire automatic weapons doing that for if they're not preparing for an armed race war?
That is what they're preparing for. Their end game is simply pure, unadulterated destruction. It is a death cult.
All hail Nyarlathotep.
All hail Nyarlathotep.
Order of Nine Angles. Although you may have heard of this society in the 90s, the history dates back to the 60s within the United Kingdom. As a satanic cult group, they follow Satanism and became somewhat famous for their theories regarding activism and neo-Nazi ideals. In learning what Satan has to offer, the members believe they're on a journey to excellence.
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
Well, like, what is Satanism, like, really?
I mean, to me, it's a logical format of exactly how to fundamentally get the most out of life without any kind of dogma, superstition, fear, or anything else controlling you. It's you being completely in control of your universe.
Okay.
And in Satanism, we have our own, general structure of how we treat people.
Oh, can you describe that structure?
I mean, it's pretty simple. We absolutely do not turn the other cheek. Stupidity is the #1 sin. If you're magic and you create something, never doubt yourself, because once you doubt yourself, it's gone. And that's the worst part about heaven or hell or any of that, is that people fundamentally believe that after this existence, they're going to go to a better place. So what you do here doesn't matter. And that's really sad.
I would say these things like the skulls, the tombstones, the coffins, any of these various objects of art are memento moris, are just symbols of death. these do not imply in any way that we're the least bit eager to die or have any sort of Freudian death wish. On the contrary, these are constant reminders that death is around the corner, and death doesn't present a better than what we have now world.
Can you walk me through the roots of American Satanism?
I would state that most ideas of Western Satanism has probably come from the Thule Society back in Germany in the early 1900s. After that, you absolutely have Crowley, who is the most evil man, alive. I mean, when you look at him, his "do what thou wilt" turned into "do your own thing," which is absolutely instrumental in the structure of the 60s, the 70s, even today with Let Your Freak Flag Fly. Like, that's all based on Crowley, who's the most evil man in the world, but then you have this hippie peace movement that spawns from this gentleman. You can even go to Charles Manson, who was instrumental in Atwa, what is it, Air, Trees, Water, Earth, I believe. The Green Movement today is all based on Charles Manson. This is a man that's still in prison today who never killed anyone. Like, if you want to talk about will and what you can create, that man knows what's going on. Yeah. And that's why they have him in a cage. And if you ask him, like, hey, do you like jail? He'll just straight up, he'll be like, what jail? Because he knows that he can do whatever he wants in his mind. Is he completely sane? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean that he's completely ignorant as to the way things work. It's the duality of nature that people don't comprehend. They only see one thing when they look at things.
The altar is a living slab of flesh in the personification or in the person of a nude young woman. The altar stone, or the mantle which holds the altar, was made from cobblestones from the San Francisco streets that were broken up in the 1906 earthquake. Satan is simply a word that means the adversary, or the opposition, or the accuser. It doesn't necessarily mean evil or brutality or cruelty. It simply means the dissenter.
This is evidently today's ritual room in the basement. And these are, I presume, the participants in the ceremony we're about to conduct. This looks about right.
The Order of the Nine Angles is actually taken from Michael Aquino, who is the co-founder of the Church of Satan. With LaVey, wrote the Satanic Rituals.
Honor that as a thought, without whose laughter the world should not be.
At least the mentality behind it is you utilize different trappings to collect more power so that you have more power to alter reality.
As a thought, great center of the cosmos, let thy flutes sing unto us, lulling us against the terrors of thy domain.
Whether it existed or didn't exist, it exists today. That's the mentality of Crowley, Manson, all of it. It's all a mental state where you restructure the entire universe through your thought process.
All hail Nyarlathotep.
All hail Nyarlathotep.
Satanists don't believe in the devil. They don't believe in heaven, hell, God, anything. We believe in us, and we believe in our will altering reality, that it's your life, it's your reality, and you have the ability to do whatever you want. And either you can do it or you can't do it. You can either be a victim or you can be a winner. And it's up to you on which choice, which path you want to take. You can either be part of it or you can be it.
First of all, it's the Order of Nine Angles is what you call a traditional satanic order, in that they revere dark gods, these acausal entities that are beyond formed existence. Basically, the entities that exist in a part of creation that's actually outside of creation. It's untouched by divine providence, and so this is what they revere, and this is what they invoke in their rites. They do this through general ritual, personal rituals to invoke this, but then they also have their group ceremonies and celebrations and rites that involve orgy, human sacrifice, bloodletting, and aeonic culling, where they'll actually focus their attention towards political or religious leaders and try to take them out magically. And so, what's not to love about a group like this? So I start investing myself pretty heavily in reading their manuscripts and then practicing from that, initiating myself through their path workings, a few of the things that I found that they really excelled at being able to bring to the forefront, one of them is pushing yourselves to extremes. So they'll go through things, especially in the early initiations, of pushing yourself physically and psychologically beyond all of your limitations, and you'll do so, you know, by doing hikes, intense hikes that you're relying on nothing but what you can pack in your backpack, and you know, I've got a friend who now is working through some of these first initiations, and so he's going to go do an Appalachian hike, which is tremendously difficult. So he's exploring, as he's getting ready for this, the intensity that you have to push your body through, and more than your body, your mind as well. They'll do this through what they call insight roles as well, where they'll put themselves in situations that they normally wouldn't enter into. So if they naturally are tending more towards pacifism and kind of a Unitarian philosophy, then they'll be encouraged to go join the military. If they're a more violent, aggressive person, they'll be encouraged to join a monastery. This is learning through dialectics, which is basically you put the two extreme opposites in front of you, experience both of them, and then you'll find in the middle ground where you really belong. But you can't do that until you've experienced the extremes. They also will push their reality to the two extremes, and this will happen in first there, and you do always want to, as you're doing any of these pushing of anything, you always want to start from the core center, being yourself, and move outwards. And so you'll start pushing your family life to extremes in developing it in a very intentional way, for very intentional purposes, and then further out there from your local community into your you know, you do state level, national, and then global, and so they'll make these effects through physical means as well as magical. So magical, obviously, they'll start doing rituals to try to affect these massive changes that they're looking for. Physically is where they really get into some issues, because they do promote things like terrorism to get their point across.
On May 19th, 2017, in Tampa, Florida, a story about a bizarre series of crimes unfolded on the nightly news.
When Tampa police arrived at this smoke shop on Friday, Devin Arthurs was holding an employee and two customers at gunpoint.
Police responded to the hostage crisis and took 18-year-old Devin Arthurs into custody. There, he confessed to a far worse crime, a double homicide.
Arthurs admitted he killed his two roommates, 22-year-old Jeremy Himmelman and 18-year-old Andrew Wunschuk, who he described as neo-Nazis.
When police arrived at Arthur's apartment, what they found was no ordinary crime scene. Inside were neo-Nazi decorations, hordes of white supremacist literature, and a framed photograph of Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. They also found the bodies of Jeremy Himmelman and Andrew Wunschuk, both shot at close range with a semi-automatic weapon. Police had no idea they'd just stumbled on the headquarters of a newly created neo-Nazi hate group called Atomwaffen.
When they engage in perhaps fascist role play or you know, it's like if someone dresses up as Hitler, they're venerating the ability to do so, knowing that it will be criticized, knowing that it will be opposed.
Atomwaffen Division is a terrorist organization. It's a neo-Nazi organization that I was part of. What's it called? Atomwaffen Division. Okay.
Arthurs told investigators he had a falling out with his roommates, who he identified as neo-Nazis.
They would say stuff like, I want to blow up refugee ships. They would say stuff like they want to go target like blacks, like how Dylan Roof did. These people, they were not just innocent people. They weren't just my roommates, is what I mean.
Inside the apartment, the bomb squad also discovered explosive components, including homemade fuses and even radioactive material. Arthurs claimed it belonged to a fourth roommate named Brandon Russell, a member of the Florida National Guard and the founder of Atomwaffen Division.
Brandon's the leader of the organization.
He is?
Yeah, and I was a senior leader at one point.
I thought I'd heard the name of just about every hate group in America, but I'd never heard of Atomwaffen. What I find about them online is deeply disturbing. Powerful propaganda that highlights their shadowy paramilitary organization. Even their name is extreme. Atomwaffen is German for atomic weapons. And from what I can tell, membership is growing.
You have to set yourself apart in this order from the established order and attempt to subvert it mentally on your own level.
We had talked to Andrew on Wednesday, and he said, I'm ready to get out of here. Devin Arthurs has converted to Islam, and he's spouting off all this stuff.
ISIS stuff. Like he was
ISIS.
He was listening to jihadist videos.
But the man whose ideas had more influence than most on Copeland was David Myatt from Worcestershire. The NSM's first leader, the intellectual who shaped the ideas propelling Copeland on his road to terrorism. A man who once said the Nazi movement needed people prepared to get their hands dirty and perhaps spill some blood.
Mr. Myatt, we're from the BBC, we're from Panorama. We wanted to ask you some questions about the NSM and David Copeland, the London nail bomber.
I have no comment to make.
You called for the creation of racial tension, and that's exactly what Copeland did. You inspired Copeland indirectly to do what he did.
No comment about anything to do with that.
But 2 years ago, when you were head of the NSM was calling for the creation of racial terror with
I have
bombs.
no comment to make about the past, as I said, and as...
Well, the fact that you're making no comment, doesn't that make it clear that you are accepting some responsibility?
I have no comment to make about responsibility and anything to do with that.
Any guilt?
What I feel is between me and God. It's nothing to be made public, it is a private matter.
David Woolstan Myatt, born 1950, formerly known as Abdulaziz ibn Myatt and Abdul al-Kari, is the founder of the Numinous Way, a former British Muslim, and a former neo-Nazi. A British iconoclast who has lived a somewhat itinerant life and has undertaken an equally desultory intellectual quest, Myatt is emblematic of the modern syncretism of radical ideologies, and regarded as an example of the axis between right-wing extremists and Islamists.
It's dedicated to sedition. Well, in many ways, I think the actual satanic orders, I know the O9A doesn't claim the title of actual Satanist order or anything like that. They don't go far enough. Most Satanist orders, 99% of their content is literally just, oh yeah, comfy, fluffy, get along, respect nature. It's almost like Wicca in essence. I don't have a problem with that. But if you intend to subvert, at least on a cultural level, you have to dig a little bit deeper than that.
The cult does say that they predate Christian and pagan traditions, but at the same time, there's no crucial evidence of it existing before the 1960s, so it's really unclear of when it actually was established. And the founder of ONA is Anton Long, so they are not sure of much about him either. They did say that when he was a young man, he traveled all around the world and picked up things about like different cultures and different religions and different cults and stuff like that. Thought they were all stupid, and he decided to make his own. It has been described as one of the most extreme and dangerous Satanist groups in the world. So the whole thing about this cult is to break from societal norms, in a sense, isolating themselves from the outside world so they can commit crimes, embrace political extremism and violence, and commit human sacrifice. That's kind of like what they do.
The Canadian Army reservist accused of recruiting for a violent neo-Nazi terrorist group has been arrested in the U.S. Patrick Matthews had been missing since allegations first surfaced back in August. He was arrested along with 2 others in Delaware today. All 3 are alleged members of the base. Matthews is facing firearms charges and is accused of intent to commit a felony. He had been a combat engineer and had basic explosives training in the Canadian military, which released him when the allegations came to light. Soon afterwards, the RCMP raided his home just outside Winnipeg and seized a number of firearms, but they did not find him and they could not charge him. Matthews went missing soon afterwards. The FBI says he crossed into the United States illegally.
That's kind of like what they do. And they practice magic on the left-hand path. ONA is not comprised of a sort of political structure, as a lot of cults and other organizations do. They usually have a leader and then kind of like a tree going down of like hierarchy and order and stuff like that. In ONA, they absolutely have nothing. They're going by just the members, but they don't call them members. They call them associates, and they go by kind of like a grade.
Ryan Thorpe of the Winnipeg Free Press is the journalist who exposed Matthews' alleged link to the extremist group called The Base. And Ryan joins us now live from Winnipeg. So what more can you tell us about Patrick Matthews, going back to last August?
Well, going back to last August, he was actively going around the city of Winnipeg and putting up recruitment posters for this violent neo-Nazi paramilitary group called The Base. That's what kickstarted our investigation here at the Winnipeg Free Press, which led to me reaching out, posing as a white nationalist interested in joining, eventually joining up with the group, identifying that Matthews was indeed a combat engineer in the Canadian Armed Forces, and then publicly exposing him. What we've learned today, particularly out of the court documents that are being made public out of the U.S., is what Matthews has been up to since he disappeared from his Beausejour home in August and illegally crossed into the U.S. He's been actively moving around a number of different U.S. states, according to these court documents. He's been involved with the building of a fully functioning assault rifle and has stockpiled a pretty considerable number of rounds of ammunition.
Mm-hmm. And based on your investigating and your journalism and him disappearing since the summer, what did you make of today's news of his arrest in the United States?
I was relieved at the news. Patrick Matthews is an individual who, during the course of my undercover investigation, repeatedly expressed a potential propensity for violence. This is someone who I saw spoke openly about murdering people, about committing violence against activists, who referred to famous terrorists as the Saints. So to hear that he had, not only an assault rifle, but body armor and more than 1,600 rounds of ammunition, and was apparently interested in going to this pro-gun rights rally in Virginia that has led the governor there to declare a state of emergency. I don't know what his intentions were down there, but I'm certainly glad that this has now come to a safe conclusion.
What were your greatest concerns when you infiltrated this group? What more can you tell us about the base and their goal?
For sure. The base really represents the most violent and radical fringes of the far-right hate movement today. They're not your run-of-the-mill group of racists. These are people who are proponents of a theory called accelerationism, where they want to essentially engage in terror attacks to try and destabilize society and bring about a race war so that they can forge a white ethno-state. It's very explicitly about violence, and folks who track this stuff, researchers, say that it is groups like the base that are the most concerning elements of the extremist right today.
Mm-hmm. There's the rhetoric, there's what you say online, and then there's action. Did you suspect that there was going to be any action taken?
Well, while I was going through the vetting process to join this organization, one step I had to do was I had to meet their recruiter in person. I didn't know at the time this was Patrick Matthews, although I was able to later figure that out. During our meeting here in Winnipeg, he talked about the possibility of derailing a train. He made very clear to me that he wanted to commence paramilitary training here in Manitoba, and that was what he was recruiting me for. He advocated that I get a gun license and to start buying guns. He said if I couldn't get a gun license right away, that he would supply me with weapons so that we could begin training. These groups are not just talk. They are very explicitly about translating their worldviews into real-world action.
And so how concerning should everyone be? How concerned should we be that this person was in the Canadian military?
I think it's incredibly concerning because not only did he have firearms training, as a combat engineer, he was trained in the use of explosives. You know, I don't want to overstate how many of these people are out there. The base is a relatively small organization, but we've consistently seen that it only takes one lone actor motivated by a hateful ideology to cause significant bloodshed. So I think the stance we should all be taking is that even one extremist in the Canadian Armed Forces is too many. But as we know, Patrick Matthews is not an isolated case.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel safe after what you've revealed?
Yeah, I feel safe. I mean, after Matthews disappeared, I think that there was a period of time where we were perhaps a bit on edge, but it quickly became apparent to me that he had likely crossed into the U.S. As far as I was aware, he was the only actor from the base that was active here in Manitoba. So I wasn't overly concerned. Having said that, I'm also not trying to be cavalier about it. These are dangerous individuals, and I had obviously done something that was going to upset them. So I certainly did try to take a number of precautions to keep myself safe.
Okay, well, we appreciate you taking time to speak with us tonight, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Ryan Thorpe of the Winnipeg Free Press. He is the journalist who infiltrated the extremist group known as The Base.
Tonight, a shocking series of discoveries. The FBI found bomb-making materials and radioactive elements they believe could be tied to a neo-Nazi group.
I never said go out and kill anybody. I said if you must do it, for God's sake, do it right.
So there's a trend going around YouTube lately about people buying mystery boxes and unboxing them. Well, recently, people have been buying mystery boxes off the dark web and, you know, unboxing them for our entertainment. Well, I was watching this guy, I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but in the video he did say that his nickname is Jazzy. So Jazzy did a dark web unboxing and it was absolutely terrifying.
Is it gonna keep going there? Yeah. What are the odds that there's one going left?
Bro, it's a USB.
You're lying.
Swear to God.
The odds of us getting.
Bro, you probably have to break. Look, I'm holding it. Listen, I'm holding it. Hold up.
I don't know how we missed this. There's a letter right there. I ran out of gloves, so I'm trying to do this, but letter is right there. It is E. So now we have J, A, Z.
Well, it's no order, just put them together.
I, E. And this is what I have so far. I'm missing one letter. Jazzy is what some people call me. Is a nickname, which is kind of weird, but I'm still missing one letter.
The box literally weighed 23 pounds and it was filled with just terrifying things, and there was like a puzzle mixed in with it, and it was just absolutely terrifying. Well, when he put them together without the other letter missing, it did spell Jazzy, which he thought was very, very strange. But when he looked in the flash drive that came in the box, the last letter was there and it spelled out his mom's name. I don't know. That's just really weird to me, and it's like, dude, run. These people are after you. On the flash drive is what I'm going to talk mostly about. So on the flash drive there was a series of really dark and disturbing images that just were absolutely terrifying and just nightmare fuel. pure nightmare fuel.
I run to the file. It's an image. It's named Mom. Wait a second. No. I already know what it is. R. What's going on? R-E-Z-I-J-A. R-E-Z-I-J-A. That's my mom's name. Alright, so we're done with trashes. Untitled folder. Alright, so now we're gonna get into the real stuff, I guess. That's so creepy, man. So, okay, this is what I assume is KKK member. Beats me. I don't know. This is great. So that's it for entitled folder 1. Let's do 2. Fucking terrifying. Dude. I already know it's gonna be bad. I already know, so. What the fuck? What is Nection? I don't understand. What is that? I'm curious as to what Nection is. Nection? It's a host agency. There's no way that's what it is. Okay. So clearly that's the sign. Clearly there's more meanings to Nection than one.
The one photo that I am most interested in is the last photo on the flash drive. It was like really, really creepy, and I was just like, what? So even he was really interested in trying to look it up and Google it, but to no avail. So using my excellent detective and researching skills, I decided to look into it, and I wanted to give him the information that I found. So, Jazzy, whatever your name is, I'm pretty sure it's the name of your channel, but it's so hard to pronounce, and I don't want to butcher it. So this is for you. This is for all the viewers out there who watched his videos and were like, what's happening? And just anyone who wanted to know about this cult. Just a quick disclaimer, I knew absolutely nothing about this cult beforehand. Before watching his videos, I knew absolutely nothing. Just the moment I saw the little contract or whatever the heck that was, I was like, dude, that's freaky. I want to look into that. So I did, and now I know about it. I wrote down a bunch of notes that I found. I started out like he did with Google Images. I like to find images that I see that seem like they're related to what I'm researching, and then clicking on them and going to websites and things of that sort. I started researching it and looking at the photos and stuff, and each photo was just bringing me to like metal bands and photographers who take like abandoned photos, which are really cool and like really creepy, but I was mostly just getting bands and artists and stuff like that under the name Nexion. So I kept digging and kept digging and kept digging, and I found the actual logo or symbol that they used on the contract, and it was linked to a band called, I'm gonna butcher this name, Deverils Nexion, whatever. I'm actually going to be playing the song in the background, and the song was called Sinister Music of the Deverils Nexicon. So they spelt music with a CK, like magic, like pagan magic with a CK. So that had me thinking like, okay, this seems like kind of legit. And then also under the profile for this this song, it said the traditional lexicon of the Order of Nine Angles, or ONA. So I was like, that sounds legit. Order of the Nine Angles? Order of Nine Angles? That sounds like actually legit. And at first I was like, is that maybe a misprint? Did they meant to say angels, not angles? But no, it's actually angles, like acute, obtuse, right angle, like actual angle. After that, I listened to the song, I thought it was creepy, and then I continued searching through Google Images, and I found this image, and it is a guidebook, basically, to being a part of this cult. So it was called Nexicon, A Guide to Sinister Strategy, and it has an eagle and a swastika, and I was like, nope. I actually did click on it and start reading through it, and there was some really, really weird stuff. Basically, what it was doing was kind of reforming whoever was reading it to, like, basically they were like, oh, Einstein was a myth, and children should leave the house and be on their own by the age of 16 because they'll become soft, and they should learn how to kill and skin animals and all that good stuff.
In 2018, 50 more Americans were killed by extremists who all took inspiration from the same far-right websites and the same hate-filled source material. And yet, a 2019 RAND report confirmed that under the Trump administration, funding for Homeland Security programs to counter domestic extremism was cut by around 70%.
All city units are being sent to an active shooter.
Suspects talking about all these Jews need to die.
All of this leaves a wide open playing field for white power influencers like Atomwaffen's ideological godfather, James Mason, a longtime figure in the white power movement who debated his apocalyptic worldview on radio programs like this one from 1991.
You're advocating murder and terrorism. You're advocating the violent overthrow of the government.
I'm telling you what's on the way, Bob. Wouldn't do me any good to advocate
Clever,
anything.
sir. Clever, sir.
It's going to happen on its own.
No, that's cute. That's cute.
No
That's cute.
one can stop it. No one.
In the apartment where Andrew Onischuk was murdered, Tampa police found Atomwaffen flyers that quoted James Mason. Proof to me of his influence on that group.
They're in direct contact with James Mason. They're not just believers, they're basically his disciples.
I think it's time for me to confront James Mason. Nothing exists in a vacuum, and the white power movement is no different. There have always been puppet masters pulling the strings and fueling hatred. And when it comes to Atomwaffen's influences, one name comes up again and again: James Mason. A man whose photos blanket their website. Mason was recruited into the American Nazi Party at 14 years old. In 1980, he began publishing newsletters, which were ultimately collected into what became a kind of playbook for white supremacists.
Siege by James Mason.
Siege calls for the use of violence to jumpstart a race war, ideas that Atomwaffen has adopted as their own.
White revolution is the only solution.
I tracked Mason down and found him living in Denver, not far from the state capitol. And somewhat to my surprise, he agrees to meet me.
Mr. Mason? Christian, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, unanimity. Come on in.
I read Mason's writings when I first joined the movement. I never imagined I'd be seated across from him one day, on opposite sides of a deadly conflict. Atomwaffen is a group that is inspired by your writing.
Yeah.
How do you feel that the writings that you wrote, even in the 80s, that I remember reading, are out there today still inspiring people to kill other people?
Well, now wait a minute. I never said go out and kill anybody. I said if you or anybody else must do this, for God's sake, do it right.
I found out that Atomwaffen members make pilgrimages to Mason's apartment to snap fanboy selfies with their hero. And they're using the internet to make Mason's vile ideas relevant to a new generation of racists. But I know from experience that no one is radicalized purely by ideology. Everyone has a backstory.
I was hating school. I was turning very much inward. I was alienated and I was angry, and you put those two together and look out. Now my dad had a private arsenal. For each piece he had 1,000 rounds. And I said to myself, well, if something doesn't change within a few short days, I'm going into that office and settle accounts.
You're talking about being a school shooter.
Yes, I was going to be the first. I was going to be the first. Yeah.
What stopped you?
When I called party headquarters.
He's talking about the American Nazi Party. They invited Mason to join, and that diverted his path from school shooter and launched his career as a propagandist. Would you discourage one of your followers that came to you right now in private and said, I'm thinking about doing this? Would you discourage them from
I've had it happen, and young people, and I said, don't do it, don't do it. You're valuable, we need you. I had Sam Woodward here, and if he had run that past me, I'd have said, don't do it.
In January of 2018, Atomwaffen member Samuel Woodward stabbed to death a 19-year-old Jewish college student named Blaze Bernstein.
I'd have said, just don't do it.
But don't do it why?
Because you're worth far more.
But what about the person's life who was lost?
I'm not too concerned about that. I'm not too concerned.
But knowing that there are people like that that are reading your book, that are living out word for word.
If you've got to do it, make it worthwhile.
So somebody like James Alex Fields, who drove his car into a group of people and murdered a woman, you wouldn't condemn him?
Oh, absolutely not. That had to be done. There should have been more. I think somebody should have opened up on that crowd of communists down there and just laid waste to them. He should have accounted for 50 or more. Now he's doing life for one confused, lost and confused white girl who got turned against her own people.
Well, I know Heather Heyer's mother. She lost her daughter, who was at the peak of her life.
She was victimized by the communists.
Well, no, she was victimized by a Nazi. That Nazi drove his car and murdered her. Hey, James. You've been doing this for 50 years.
53.
53 years. Are you tired?
No.
Tell me.
I've never been more invigorated. Most people don't survive. They'll either burn out, or they'll go to jail, or they'll be killed. But I survived. I survived.
James Mason has survived by living like a coward, staying in the background while inspiring others to bloody their hands and commit violence.
So basically, like how far along you are in your spiritual path, you get a grade name, and there's seven different grade names. Literally, everyone is kind of like equal, but at different stages of their spiritual path. So next I went on another website called occultstudy.org. It says that they offer an aggressive and elitist spirituality which punishes its members to find and surpass their mental, physical, and psychic limits in search of spiritual ascension. They define themselves as a tough path of social, criminal, and supernatural conditioning to break the link with normal societal conditioning. So basically, they're taking everything you know or thought you knew and completely changing it to what they want you to think. So Nexions actually mean like they're groups, and it also can be described as doorways to the supernatural. There's this realm called the causal realm. This is a place of great power, but it's not considered safe or friendly. So they basically strive to reach this realm through spiritual practice to achieve something like great change in this world. So the associates can be any of these 6 different categories. So the first category is a traditional Nexion. They follow the initiatory path, or that's also known as the Sevenfold Way. So the second thing that you could be is a Drek, or another name for them is a Niner, and they're the more modern or ethnic people of the group, so the cool kids. The next one is a Belobian, which are musicians and artists of the group. They usually express their spirituality and their experiences through art. The next one is a gang, clan, tribe, or tribe members. So if you're a part of a gang and stuff or something, and you're also a part of the cult, then you are under this category. The next one is one of the most secretive and rarest of types of associate, and they're the mystics, and they follow the Witha tradition, and these are always women, and they have special psychic powers, and they work and live in the wilderness, sometimes in small groups, and it's usually within like one season or like over like a few months or something, and they're completely alone in the wilderness. It's either one person or a small group of like 2 or 3 people, just completely alone, cut off from the rest of the world. So the last type of associate that there is are just people that are associated with other cults but are inspired by the ONA, and this is literally the most unclear part of the entire cult. Like, they're not entirely sure like what it has to do with the cult, how it contributes and stuff. The only thing that they could translate from it was Temple of Blood. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they do or anything like that, so that's really creepy. The house has 5 fundamental principles. Each associate of the cult has to follow these 5 rules, and it's basically what they live by. This cult seems more like a way of life than it does kind of a spiritual path. So the first principle is called the way of practical deeds. Members are expected to live in ecstatic life, or a life that defies social norms and laws. They are expected to understand life through action and not reflection. The second principle is called the way of culling, and this is the most controversial of all 5 principles, and it has 2 sides. So the first side is some human scum have no place on this earth and are to be removed. They may do this by gaining a position of authority or through combat training. And they were saying how sometimes an associate would become a policeman so that they could kill criminals. Murder, becoming a police officer to murder. The second part of this is super blunt, and I understand why it's super controversial if the first part wasn't already controversial. Blood sacrifice to the dark gods. Fun! The third principle is the way of kindred honor. The need for solidarity and mutual trust, honor, and respect between members. All members are extended family, and you protect your own. Number 4, the way of defiance of and practical opposition to Magian abstractions. All members must fight against forces such as globalism and rampant capitalism in an effort to an earlier, less exploitative form of society. And the last principle is called the way of the Ronwitha tradition. This is only applied to women of the cult. Encourages the return of mystic, empathic, and folk traditions. Embracing the divine feminine archetype encourages the development of strong female leaders. And Ronwitha means one who understands, and it can also be translated to one who knows secrets. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the sevenfold way. So, like I said before, the traditional Nexions follow the sevenfold way. So another word for the sevenfold way is hebdomadry. It's deeply rooted in Western occultism and provides a path to ascension that is extremely difficult physically and psychically. The 7 refers to the 7 grades of the path, or the 7 planets. So the 7 grades that I was telling you guys about is like you start at grade 1 and then you make your way up to grade 7. So each of these grades are achieved through countless hours of studying, training, rituals, and just learning everything that you need to know, and just going through your path, going through challenges. Some of these challenges are absolutely crazy, and they make you do things like triathlons and stuff like that because you need to be physically fit, apparently. Some grades even involve living in complete isolation for at least 1 season. And you must also be able to cycle, run, and hike considerable distances. Some associates are even given new roles in life, such as a criminal, or they force them to go into the military. So the 7 different grades, the first grade is neophyte, second is initiate, third is external adept, fourth is internal adept, fifth is master or mistress, sixth is grandmaster or mosa, and 7 is immortal. They believe in a causal over science. When I was reading that book, the one that I was talking about in the beginning, they basically said that Einstein was a fraud and a myth, and he didn't exist, and everything he talks about is a myth. Their logic of it is the supernatural realm where the laws of physics are meaningless and time and space is too complex to comprehend. Yeah. So, within the cult, they also practice 3 different categories of magic. So the first category is external, and it's also known as hermetic. And this includes normal magic that, like normal witches use every day, like love spells, curses, luck spells, spells for good health, all that kind of stuff goes under the first one, external. The second one is internal, and this is where things start to get really weird. So this is transforming the practitioner from something human into something alien. The third and last category of magic that they use is, I'm gonna butcher this name again, but Aeonic, and that is creating widespread change using Nexions. Another thing you might be wondering is I said that they were a satanic cult, but does that mean that they necessarily worship Satan? No. So I had little to no evidence that they actually worshipped Satan per se. What I found that they worship are something called the dark gods. So these gods are extremely unique and they are not found anywhere else in history or in any other religions. So basically, they believe that these gods are found within your own subconscious. And they have many ancient texts that say the names of these gods and also certain sigils and stuff and how to contact these gods. But if you contact the gods poorly or if you do it wrong or something like that, it says that you can go insane or even die.
It's not a matter of debate. But some people have the bad taste to raise the question of the truth of the sacred story. The keepers of the faith do not enter into debate with them. They ignore them or denounce them as blasphemers.
What kind of music do you hear? You're talking about a song that wasn't engineered to be heard backwards. You'd have to turn your ears off to not hear it.
That is actually, and it makes me wonder. When he says, and it makes me wonder, backwards is translated into... Try it.
Some have stolen children from others and they're in pursuit right now to kill them because they stole their children. And we are sitting here waiting on a powder keg. I don't think this is what we want to do with our babies. I don't think that's what we had in mind to do with our babies. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down.